Thog is one of those obscure Muppet characters that everybody knows, but nobody really knows the name of. Most well known nowadays as one of the large monsters that walks through the arches at the beginning of the Muppet Show, Thog's history actually predates the Muppet Show by several years. Back in the early 1970s, before the Muppet Show days, Thog was one of the most prominently used Muppet characters. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Muppet Deep Dive. I'm your host Ty, and today we're going to be discussing the history of Thog. Introduced in 1970, Thog was one of the first large, full-body Muppet characters, standing at a whopping 9.5 feet tall. For reference, Big Bird, introduced a year before Thog, is 8'2", and Sweetums, introduced a year later, is 9 feet tall. And while most full-body Muppet characters are tall and thin, Thog is tall and very large, making him probably the biggest character in the Muppets ensemble. Thog was first created for a TV special called The Great Santa Claus Switch, which aired as a special episode of The Ed Sullivan Show on December 20th of 1970. The full history of this special is really interesting, but I'll save it for a future video around Christmas time. Anyway, it's about an evil magician named Cosmo Scam, portrayed by Harvey Korman, who lives in a cave underneath Santa Claus's workshop. He hatches up a diabolical plan to kidnap and impersonate Santa on Christmas Eve, and then go around the world stealing things from people instead of giving out gifts. In order to help accomplish his evil goals, Cosmo Scam had an army of minions, the Frackles, which have continued to be used in Muppet productions to this day. But his two main henchmen were Thog and another full-body character named Thig. Thog was performed by Jerry Nelson here, and in subsequent appearances, and he included mechanisms that moved his eyes, eyelids, and ears. Thig, meanwhile, was performed by Frank Oz and was a bit smaller than Thog. He had a movable nose, eyes, and eyebrows. The two are depicted as lovable, very dim-witted henchmen for Cosmo Scam, and they're the ones tasked with kidnapping Santa at the beginning of the special, breaking into his workshop and bringing him down into the dungeon. Thog and Thig are made to watch over Santa throughout the rest of the special.
Oh, you're not gonna deliver no presents.
You're gonna stay right here.
No, I'm leaving.
You are? Well, okay.
What are you doing? You're not supposed to let him out.
I forgot.
But after teaching them about the importance of Christmas and giving, Thog and Thig have a change of heart and decide they want to help Santa deliver presents on Christmas Eve.
We'll let you out of the dungeon now.
That'd be nice, boys. Hi there, Mr. Claus. Oh, hello, Mr. Scam.
Unfortunately, Cosmo Scam overhears this, realizes that they're deserting, and lock the two of them in the dungeon alongside Santa. The three are saved thanks to one of Santa's elves named Fred, who gives them the key to the dungeon.
Santa!
Fred!
That's Fred.
Who's Fred?
I'm Fred.
Hi, Fred.
Thanks to Thog, Thig, and Santa, the Frackles have a change of heart, and Fred stops Cosmo Scam. Thog was surprisingly implemented into the Muppets ensemble immediately after the Great Santa Claus Switch. At a time before the Muppet Show, basically any Muppet that became popular would soon join the recurring cast of Muppet characters that would make TV show appearances. And Thog appeared alongside a massive number of Muppet and Sesame Street characters on a 1971 episode of The Dick Cavett Show.
Tonight, Dick's special guests are Jim Henson with the Muppets, Big Bird, Bert and Ernie, Grover, Kermit, Ralph, Phenomena, Oscar, Thog, and special guest star, the Cookie Monster.
Knowing that Thog nowadays really isn't the most prominent member of the Muppets, it's crazy to see him get called out by the announcer the same way that Kermit, Rolf, and the Sesame Street characters do. Thog appears early on in the episode, comforting Dick Cavett, who's talking about how he sometimes feels lonely in his job. Thog gives him a big old hug, and later on in the episode, he sings for him. During an interview in the episode, Jim Henson mentions that Thog is a very large Frackle.
And actually, Thog was one of the Frackles too. He was a very large Frackle.
And while nowadays Thog isn't really classified as a Frackle anymore, back in 1971, only a year after the Great Santa Claus Switch came out, there wasn't really another way to classify him. He was part of the Frackle Army, after all. You may have noticed that while discussing Thog's appearance here on the Dick Cavett Show, I haven't once mentioned his partner in crime, Thig, and the reason behind that is pretty sad. Although Thog and the Frackles continued to make appearances after the Great Santa Claus Switch, Thig did not, and he was completely ditched after the special. To this day, Thig has never made another appearance, and nobody really knows why the character was dropped. Thog made a few more appearances over the next few years, and his appearances quickly gained sort of a formula, where he would be a large, lovable character that guest stars could sing and dance alongside. He appeared in Nancy Sinatra's live stage show in 1971, where he sang alongside her. He appeared in an episode of the Julie Andrews Hour in 1973, where he sang alongside her, and in 1974, Thog featured in the second Muppet Show pilot, The Muppet Valentine Show, where he sang alongside Mia Farrow. When The Muppet Show officially began, Thog would make a few appearances in some episodes, with his role continuing to be just a large character that guest stars could sing with, dance with, or just interact with. In Season 1, Thog made a couple of speaking appearances, with his most prominent one being the sketch where Harvey Korman tries to train Thog, who's seen as a dangerous circus animal.
Listen to me. Give me your full attention. Speak! Speak, you demon, speak!
I hardly know where to begin. I was rereading Balzac the other day, only in translation.
Enough!
Starting in Season 2, Thog became a part of the Muppet Show intro, which is easily what he's most well known for today. Thog, alongside some of the other Muppet monsters, walk through the arches at the beginning of the intro and point up to the singers. While the Muppet Show intro changed a few times in subsequent seasons, Thog and the monsters part always stayed the same. As the Muppet Show continued, Thog continued to make intermittent appearances, usually alongside a guest star in a segment that required a very large character. But in these later appearances, Thog very rarely spoke. Before we had the later seasons of The Muppet Show, we of course had The Muppet Movie, where Thog appears alongside hundreds of other Muppets and Sesame Street characters during the Rainbow Connection finale scene. Thog is the biggest character in the crowd and is placed right behind Big Bird, so you can see just how large he really is. Easily my all-time favorite Thog appearance is in Season 5, Episode 2 of The Muppet Show. This episode guest starred Loretta Swit, and in one segment she sings I Feel the Earth Move while inside of a house. And why does she feel the earth move? Why, of course it's because a giant, kaiju-sized Thog is outside of her house, stomping around, destroying a town and creating earthquakes. Eventually, he picks up Loretta before placing her back down and then stomping on her house. This whole segment is super fun and honestly pretty visually impressive. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Make sure to check it out. Unfortunately, although Thog continued to appear in the intro of each Muppet Show episode, I Feel the Earth Move would mark his final appearance in a segment on the show. And after the Muppet Show ended, Thog would not appear again for several decades. I assume Thog's absence is probably because of just how large he is. Being 9.5 feet tall and several feet wide, there aren't really all that many spaces you could fit Thog when you're filming with puppets. But Thog, like so many other Muppets, would not be gone forever, and he made his grand return in the 2011 Muppet movie, where he appeared at several points throughout. For this appearance, he was performed by Tyler Bunch. Thog is involved in a pretty notable gag in the movie. When the Muppets are rehearsing to recreate their old Muppet Show intro for the Muppet Telethon, Thog actually gets stuck within the arches. And at the end of the movie, when we see the full version of the Muppet Telethon theme, Thog has to walk out in front of the arches instead of through them. While this may just seem like a fun gag for the movie, there's actually a behind-the-scenes reason as to why this happened. Thog had to be fully rebuilt for the 2011 Muppet movie, and his designer, Jim Krupa, didn't have enough reference material for Thog when recreating him. So the new Thog puppet was accidentally built 2.5 feet taller than the original, meaning that Thog went from 9.5 feet tall to now 12 feet tall with his current puppet. Thog appeared once again in Muppets Most Wanted in the background of a couple of shots. In this film's version of the Muppet Show intro, we don't see the monster segment, instead being shown an extended segment of Rolf and Floyd Pepper. I guess that's one way to deal with Thog being too big. Muppets Most Wanted is currently Thog's most recent puppet appearance as of 2023, but he was actually referenced twice in the 2018 Muppet Babies reboot. In the episode The Great Muppet Sportathon, a golden Thog statue holding a tennis racket adorns the top of a trophy. And in the episode Summer's Disaster Piece, a painting of Thog can be seen parodying Pablo Picasso's The Old Guitarist. And finally, according to writer Kirk Thatcher, Thog was considered to appear in 2021's Muppet Haunted Mansion for a gag scene, but he didn't make it in. I guess this room has no windows, no doors, and no space for Thog. Over the years, Thog has had a couple of minor illustrated appearances, including in the Muppet comic series, which was released while his character wasn't appearing anymore. Palisades never made a Thog action figure, probably because of size, but he was one of the only Muppet characters to be included in the Mini Muppets line. Thog was a part of the second wave of these non-posable figures, and was released in 2003. This is the only physical piece of Thog merchandise currently ever released. And there you have it, the full history of Thog from 1970 to 2023. Thog is such an interesting case to me because he started out as a pretty well-known character who made appearances time and time again, but over the years he's really faded into obscurity as the Muppet cast expanded and got larger and got a lot more monster characters. And while his most recent appearance was Muppets Most Wanted, I'm sure we'll see him again soon, as long as the Muppets appear in a place where the ceiling is higher than 12 feet.